It was a crisp September morning when Margaret Hensley, the Lakeside Estates HOA president, marched up to my cabin like she was about to issue a presidential decree. No introduction, no pleasantries, just a clipboard clutched like a weapon and the words, "You violated 9 community regulations by existing." I stood there, wrench in hand, water dripping from the pipe I was fixing, wondering if I'd stumbled into a bad sitcom. She wasn't joking, though. She thought she was untouchable, the queen of this lakeside neighborhood. What followed was a battle that turned her world upside down and mine too. If you've ever tangled with an HOA tyrant, you'll want to hear how this unfolded. This cabin, tucked 50 yards from Lake Serenity's shore, was my grandfather's pride. I spent every summer here as a kid, fishing with him, learning to fix boat engines. He passed away last month, leaving me the place. For 50 years, he lived here without a single complaint. So when Margaret declared my cabin an eyesore, blocking community lake access, I was baffled. "Ma'am, there's got to be a mistake," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This is my family's property." Her eyes narrowed like I'd insulted her pedigree. Flipping through her clipboard, she snapped, "This structure violates our aesthetic standards and safety codes. You have 30 days to demolish or relocate it, or we'll sue." The lake sparkled behind her, stretching for miles. My cabin, surrounded by pines Grandpa planted, wasn't blocking anything. But Margaret had plans, big ones. She wanted to tear down my home for a community boat dock. "It'll benefit everyone," she said, glaring at me like I was a selfish drifter. Then she pointed at the hand-carved sign by the door, Harrington's Lake Haven, 1973, and called it visual pollution. I was livid, but her legal threats sounded serious. That night, I sat on the porch, her 30-day notice in hand, staring at the lake's calm surface. Grandpa always said this place was my sanctuary. Now, some HOA dictator wanted to erase it. Then I remembered something Grandpa told me last year. If anyone messes with the cabin, check the cedar chest in the attic. I'd thought he was just being cautious, but now I wondered. I found the chest, dusty but intact, locked with a key I kept in the kitchen. Inside was a stack of papers and a letter in Grandpa's neat handwriting. My hands shook as I read. "Dear Tom, if you're reading this, someone's trying to take our cabin. Don't worry, we got you covered." The documents revealed a bombshell. Grandpa didn't just own the cabin. He owned 45 acres, including the land under every house in Lakeside Estates. In 1974, he'd signed a land use agreement, letting families build homes on his property as tenants. The HOA residents weren't homeowners, they were renting from my family for decades. I called my old friend Dave Carter, a lawyer who handles small claims but knows property law. "Bring everything to my office," he said. The next day, he confirmed it. "Tom, you're not just the cabin owner. You're the landlord of this entire neighborhood." The agreement was ironclad, recorded with the county. Better yet, it allowed eviction for tenants who disrupted community harmony, like selling lake rights they didn't own or harassing others. Margaret was doing both. She'd escalated her campaign against me. By week 2, she'd convinced the utility companies to cut my power and water, citing safety violations. I was living off a generator and bottled water. Worse, she plastered the neighborhood with flyers calling me a dangerous squatter, complete with a blurry photo of me fixing the porch. Neighbors avoided me at the gas station. Some crossed the street when I drove by. Margaret even fed the local paper a story. HOA fights illegal occupant. The article quoted her saying, "We won't let one selfish man ruin our family-friendly community." She'd turned me into a pariah. But I wasn't alone. Evelyn Brooks, a 70-year-old neighbor who'd lived here since the 70s, invited me for coffee. "Your grandpa was sharp," she said. "He knew someone like Margaret would stir trouble." Evelyn revealed Margaret's dirty tricks. She'd bullied a family into selling their home cheap over fake fence violations and sold lake access to a tourism company for $90,000. Now, residents couldn't fish on weekends because outsiders with fancy boats hogged the lake. Margaret was also dipping into the HOA fund for personal expenses, a new SUV, dinners, trips, all under community business. Dave and I spent days planning our counterattack. The agreement allowed me to evict Margaret for her violations, and we prepared notices and copies of the 1974 contract. Margaret, oblivious, planned a public spectacle, a Saturday morning cabin demolition, complete with a bulldozer and live stream. She invited reporters, residents, and officials, framing it as a victory over a squatter. We decided to use her event to reveal the truth. Friday night, I rehearsed my speech in the bathroom mirror, aiming for calm authority. Dave borrowed a projector from his office, and we tested it, beaming the contract onto the cabin's wall. Should I read the eviction notice like a lawyer or a movie hero? I asked. Hero, Dave grinned. Lawyers bore people. I barely slept, imagining Margaret's face when she learned she was my tenant. Saturday dawned clear and bright. By 9 a.m., 60 residents gathered around my cabin, sipping coffee from Margaret's folding table. She wore a hard hat, posing for her live stream like a construction mogul. Today, we remove an illegal structure threatening our community, she declared, pointing at me. This man has defied legal notices, but we're taking back what's ours. The crowd clapped, unaware of the storm coming. I waited until she signaled the bulldozer. Stepping forward, I called, Margaret, you need to read this before you do anything permanent. I held up the eviction notice. She laughed. Negotiating now? Too late. Dave fired up the projector, displaying the 1974 agreement. Tom Harrington is the legal owner of 95% of Lakeside Estates, he announced. Every house here sits on its family's land under a lease signed in 1974. The crowd gasped as signatures and maps appeared on the cabin wall. Margaret's confidence crumbled. That's impossible, she shouted. I'm the HOA president. Dave calmly listed her violations: selling lake rights, harassing residents, and misusing funds. These are grounds for eviction, he said, handing her the notice. Her live stream captured her panic as residents whispered. Evelyn stepped up. Margaret, where's that $90,000? I've seen no improvements. Others chimed in, demanding answers about the tourism deal. Sheriff's deputies, called by a resident, reviewed the documents and confirmed their legitimacy. Margaret screamed about fraud, demanding my arrest, but the deputies explained it was a civil matter. The crowd turned on her, realizing she'd misled them for years. Dave handed her a resignation letter. Trembling, she signed, her authority gone. The bulldozer operator shut off his engine and left. Margaret didn't go quietly. On her last night before the eviction deadline, my security cameras caught her pouring gasoline around the cabin at 2 a.m. Motion sensor lights scared her off before she could light the match, but the footage was clear. I pressed charges, and she was arrested for attempted arson, trespassing, and property damage. The newspaper ran a front-page story. Ex-HOA president charged in arson plot. The tourism company sued her for fraud, and she sold her house to cover legal fees, moving to a dingy apartment across town. Lakeside Estates rebuilt. I was elected HOA president, a twist I never expected. We audited the fund, uncovering Margaret's theft thousands siphoned for personal use. Residents rallied to restore my cabin, bringing tools and meals for a community work day. The lake was ours again, free of tourist boats. I renegotiated the land use agreement, giving residents security while protecting my family's rights. 6 months later, I got an email from another HOA dealing with a corrupt board member. They'd heard my story and wanted advice. From squatter to consultant, I was honored to help. I live in the cabin now, watching sunrises over Lake Serenity, just like I did with Grandpa. The community that shunned me now calls me a friend. Margaret, banned from HOA roles, works part-time at a dollar store, her reign a distant memory. Justice took time, but it arrived. Margaret thought she could erase my family's legacy, but she lost everything instead. If you faced bullies or injustice, share your thoughts below. Was Margaret's downfall fair, or did she deserve a second chance? How would you handle power abuse in your community? Let's discuss. Your perspective matters.